Welcome to VibeSense. Today, we're diving into a tense situation unfolding in Mumbai, where one man's hunger strike is pushing the entire state to a breaking point. It's a protest that hinges on a single demand, and it's pitting community against community in a huge political minefield. So let's break down what's really happening. You know, a hunger strike is already a pretty extreme form of protest, but the man at the center of this has taken it a giant step further by now refusing to even drink water. That is a move that puts a very real, very serious ticking clock on this whole situation. So you have to ask, what is the demand that's worth this level of risk?
What's really wild here is just how fast all of this has escalated. It all started on August 29th when Manoj Jarange Patil began his hunger strike. Just a couple of days later, the protests are already big enough to snarl traffic in South Mumbai. And then, by September 1st, we're talking less than 72 hours later, he refuses water. That turns a political protest into a potential life-or-death crisis.
Okay, so to really understand why this is all happening, we need to get past the protest itself and look at the single, very specific demand that's at the heart of it all. And it really all comes down to one word.
The central demand is for the government to officially recognize the entire Maratha community as Kunbi. So what does that actually mean?
Okay, so Kunbi refers to an agricultural subcaste that is already part of what's called the Other Backward Classes, or OBC category. Now, being classified as an OBC gives a community access to quotas, or reservations in government jobs and in education. So for the protesters, getting that Kunbi status is basically the key that unlocks all those benefits.
And this demand isn't just coming out of thin air. The protesters are actually pointing to old historical government records as their proof, arguing that Marathas have in the past been officially recorded as Kunbis. They're demanding what's called a GR, a formal government resolution to make that historical identity legally binding today.
So, with the life on the line, and the capital city feeling the impact, the pressure on the government is just immense. But as we're about to see, their response really shows they're stuck navigating a political minefield, and there is no easy way out.
The government's official response has been to do what governments often do. They've formed a committee. Its main job is to find a solution that can actually survive a legal challenge. And see, that's the real problem here. Previous attempts to grant the Maratha community reservations have been struck down by India's Supreme Court. And so far, this new committee hasn't figured out a way around that massive roadblock.
But this whole demand, it's not happening in a vacuum. By trying to join the OBC category, the Maratha protesters are creating a pretty significant backlash that's turning this into a much wider conflict.
This slide right here gets straight to the heart of the problem. A lot of people see this as a zero-sum game. On one side, the Maratha community is demanding inclusion, but on the other, the existing OBC community see it very differently. They argue that adding a huge and powerful group like the Marathas will just dilute the benefits for everyone already there and shrink their share of a pretty finite pie.
And what's really fascinating here is how you can see the organized opposition mobilizing. We're not just hearing some vague concerns, we are seeing specific actions. The Saikal OBC Samaj is already warning about legal challenges. The National OBC Federation has gone so far as to start its own counter-hunger strike. And you even have some lawmakers who are starting to question whether this whole protest is politically motivated.
And as you'd probably expect with local elections coming up, this has become a political tightrope walk. You have parties like the NCP and Shiv Sena that need votes from both the Maratha and the OBC communities, so they're playing it super safe, taking a cautious stance. The BJP, on the other hand, is part of the ruling coalition, so they're taking a firmer position. They have to look like they're in control, so they're emphasizing all the legal complexities and questioning the protests' motives.
Look, this is a super complex situation, and it is literally changing by the hour. So as this story continues to unfold, here are the key developments that you really need to be watching.
It really all comes down to these 4 pressure points. First, the government is totally under the gun to find some kind of legal solution. At the same time, Jarange's declining health is that ticking clock on the entire process. Meanwhile, you've got counter-protests from OBC groups building political pressure from the other side. And looming over all of it, the local elections, which will eventually force every single political party to finally pick a side.
How all those factors end up playing out will determine what happens next. And it leaves us with the central question of this entire standoff. Is this ultimately a battle over history, over identity, or is it just about raw political power? The truth is, it's probably a volatile mix of all three. Thanks for watching VibeSense.